Hi, I'm Hayley Evans with Triumph Pay, and I'm joined today with Don. Don, thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me today. Don Everhart, CTO of Freightvana. So excited to chat about some stuff today.
Awesome. Well, we're going to hit two hot topics in the freight industry right now, cybersecurity and fraud. So my first question for you, Don, is can you talk more about the cross-sector information sharing to combat fraud and what people can do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I hadn't heard that fraud was a problem in our industry. No, I'm just kidding. So, so the issue that we run into with fraud is it is so broad, and the actors really have a level of sophistication that we've not seen before. Other industries have, but as far as our industry goes, a lot of it is developing at a pretty rapid pace. And along with that, if we all try to solve it on our own, what we're seeing is we're undermanned and outgunned in a lot of regards. So we've been working with a lot of different entities. You're one of them, some of the other providers in the industry, where we look for opportunities to really get into data sharing, information sharing, and looking at how we can accelerate the speed of information that's flowing. Because until we get to a point that we can all be aware of a fraudulent actor as early as possible, it's going to be impossible for us to fight.
Right, exactly. It's interesting you mentioned all these different parties. Everyone has different pieces of information about someone, whether it's assets or their banking information or how they do business with each other. And so what we have seen is that, you work with a carrier and you have information about that carrier, but how can we share that with other brokerages and with other people? Because it's all in disparate systems, so how can we connect those systems so everyone has similar information and really start to build a profile of what carriers are doing and bad actors are doing in the industry?
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's such a thin line, and I shouldn't say there's a thin line between carriers and bad actors. That's not the thing. The thin line is between where you can see them and how it comes to life. So for us, for example, it's not like we have all in-house capacity that we use for everything. That's obviously like our first move on a lot of things, but we have to be relying on external capacity engines, right? We have to work with the load boards. And so our network is only as secure as their network. So what we find is we've joined, I think we're at about 4 or 5 fraud working groups that we're members of now. We're collaborating with somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 or 60 other brokers in the industry on how we can share information both legally and quickly. Because you run into some legal implications there along the way where it's like, just because you had a bad experience doesn't mean that that's a bad actor. But if multiple people are having bad experiences and it's at a degree that it raises to criminal, then yeah, we should probably all stop working with that carrier to some degree.
Right, right. You mentioned something earlier about how we're using AI and how we could use AI, and we're a little bit behind the 8 ball with some of these fraudulent actors and how they're using it. And we just sat in on the keynote, and one thing he mentioned was we have created a world that's now unmanageable by humans, and we need to use AI. We should welcome it. How do you think people can use AI to help manage this situation?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is yet to be determined. I think we're early in that process of identifying because we're all trying to figure out how we'll use AI in our day-to-day business. So when you start applying it to a fraud vector, there's a lot of people that have been doing really good work in that space for a long time. Your credit card companies, your financials, like you guys do a lot in that space for just identifying behaviors. You're identifying patterns, right? And that's the thing we heard this morning. It's about identifying the pattern, figuring out the action you need to take, and then moving to decision. So as far as actual pattern recognition, I think that's probably the easiest lift for us. It's then how do we decision and how do we move quickly on it. So I think and I don't want to put time frames around it, but we've certainly got a lot of road in front of us. And for us to figure out how to fight such a big problem, we are going to have to use AI, but again, we're going to have to be collaborative, right? That this is an area where it's not going to be able to be secret sauce. The betterment of this industry is not secret sauce. It may be for a little while because you're a more secure broker or intermediary, but until we're all that way, then we can get back to a level playing field where we're like actually competing on the other value props that we bring to industry.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Don, for joining me today. Last question.
Sure.
What can people look forward to in the fall at TIA Technovations?
Yeah, so the technical landscape has changed a ton, right? We're hearing a lot about fraud right now. We're talking about fraud, but a lot of the digitization, a lot of that has been in the forefront. We're seeing more around financial services and automation, especially with where the market's been for intermediaries over the last year now. If something's not providing an operational efficiency and doesn't have a very clear ROI, it's not really a viable thing that's going to catch a lot of traction in the industry at the moment.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the insights and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.